Hey there and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today we have an NBA mock draft video, but before we get into that, please subscribe to this channel. We do a lot of NBA draft coverage throughout the entire process, so make sure you are subscribed. Also, if you do enjoy the content that you see in today's video, please hit that like button. It really means the world to us to show your support. So we're going to actually jump right into it. And this order is based off of the current NBA standings. We didn't do a lottery or anything like that. We are just doing the standard standings and order for that. So number one is the Houston Rockets, and this is a big decision. Obviously, they traded away their franchise player in James Harden. They have some promising pieces like Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr., but who do you think that third guy could be for them?
Yeah, at this point, the third guy has to be Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma State. He's just the best player in this year's class. I think, plain and simple, you have to look at him as a complete player. He's 6'7", maybe 6'8" even in shoes. He's someone who has real guard skills. He's going to play the point guard in the NBA. He scored 20 points per game for Oklahoma State, and I don't even think that scoring is necessarily his greatest strength. Shot the three ball actually surprisingly well there as well, around 40% from the three-point line. Just all around a great player, a selfless star as well. I think he's going to be a perfect complement. He's going to be willing to play off ball when Kevin Porter Jr. gets some run. He's also going to be able to let Christian Wood go to work down in the low post, also utilize him very well in the pick and roll game. This is the perfect guard pick for Stephen Silas, the head coach there. He's going to make that pick and roll offense really run, and I think that he would be a great piece for the Houston Rockets.
I think we would both agree he is the best player in this class. He can be that franchise cornerstone for a team. Something that, people didn't think he could do was shoot the three at the next level. But now, obviously, he's shown in college that he can do that at an effective clip. So now we have number two, which is the Detroit Pistons. Detroit has a lot of big decisions coming up. Obviously, they had the injury happen with Killian Hayes, which that kind of stunted their progress and their growth moving forward. But now number two is very, very pivotal for this franchise. What direction do you see them going in?
Right, Troy Weaver has to make a big-time decision here about which direction he wants to take the franchise, assuming that they do stay in the top two during the lottery, which happens on the 22nd, which will obviously really shake up this draft process. If they're in the top two, he's got a decision to make whether or not he wants to go with a guard or a big man to fill out that front court. I know a lot of Pistons fans really do like Isaiah Stewart. However, I just don't know if he's the build-around center for them. I think that they have to go Evan Mobley here at this point. I think Troy Weaver has his eyes set on the big man anyway. Out of USC, averaged 3 blocks per game for the Trojans this past year. He's got a lot of offensive upside as well. Really good length. He can move out in space. I've been saying this in several videos in a row. He compares fairly well to Bam Adebayo, who was an all-defense selection this past year. He's a great player, and I think Evan Mobley has a lot of those similar characteristics that fit in today's modern NBA with the way that bigs are used out in space defensively and also as screen and roll guys fairly often on offense.
And hopefully they can kind of, do a little bit of pick and roll with Killian Hayes and obviously Evan Mobley. But Mobley is going to be a big impact defender at the next level. His switchability is great out in space. This is definitely a guy that can defend multiple positions. So that's what you really got to like about him moving forward. Number three, we have the Orlando Magic, where they're kind of going through a transitional phase. Obviously, they've been a playoff team the last couple of years, but this year was not the same. They decided to move on from Vucevic. They've made a lot of different moves. Aaron Gordon is now gone, obviously, traded him to the Nuggets. So at number three, they have a pivotal decision here. Do they look at Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs? There's a lot of options here. It's probably between those two, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is here for Orlando, and I think that they're actually one of the teams in a very, very good situation for the future, which is kind of surprising for a team that ended the year so poorly. But they don't have their two best players healthy quite yet in Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz. Once those two guys are back, you're adding two really good players into the lineup. They've got a young front court, and it's really good for them that they saw Evan Mobley go the pick before, because if Jalen Green had gone, it kind of leaves the Magic in a little bit more of a question mark situation. Jalen Green is the pick here. He averaged over 17 points per game for G League Ignite this past year on about 46% from the field efficiency. I wasn't expecting that level of efficiency from him against pro-level players. Remember, the G League is definitely a big-time step above college play, and Jalen Green showed out all year long for G League Ignite. Of course, they didn't get to where they wanted to go as a team, but Jalen Green played great. He was easily the best player on that team for a majority of that season. And I think that him going third overall gives the Orlando Magic that scorer in the half court that they badly need.
They definitely need that kind of scorer, freak athlete too. One of the most explosive athletes we've seen in quite some time. At number 4, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. They do have a nice build-around piece in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have a ton of first-round picks coming up over the next, 7 years. So you have to kind of look at this pick as, really trying to jumpstart this team. So obviously you're sitting here at number 4. You do have Jalen Suggs here available and Jonathan Kuminga. I think once again it could be between those top 2 guys.
Yeah, there's a question mark here for Sam Presti because this team does have a wide variety of needs. You look into their front court, Al Horford isn't playing for them anymore, so he's a big question mark to watch if he'll get moved this offseason or possibly down the road. There's a lot of different things that hinges here on Oklahoma City in this draft as well. At this point, I think that they have to go Jalen Suggs. They have to find a complement to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the backcourt. He's just too good of a dynamic player to pass up on here if you're Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder with the amount of needs that this team has on offense. They need more guys who can create. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was asked to do it all, and the moment he went out last year, they fell apart. They need a little bit more help. Jalen Suggs can do it on both ends of the floor.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that would be the perfect complementary piece to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And now we're sitting here at number 5, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, they've been pretty guard heavy in their draft history, but maybe that changes this year. Once again, Jonathan Kuminga, Scotty Barnes could be potential targets. Do you see that being the direction they go in?
Right, I do think that they are looking at the forward position here, and this is a little bit of a shakeup from the original and normal top 5 we've been seeing here in the mocks. I'm actually moving Scotty Barnes up 1 pick over Jonathan Kuminga here, and he's going to play a little bit of a pseudo point forward for Cleveland. He did play point guard for the Seminoles this past year quite a bit, averaged north of 4 assists a game, and was really, really impressive for me on the defensive end of the floor as well. I don't think Colin Sexton is going to be back in Cleveland. I think he's a big-time name to watch this offseason for the trade market. I think the Cavaliers are just tired of losing, and I think that they're going to try and make some maybe extreme moves to make things work. Scotty Barnes and Darius Garland are going to be a young combo to watch. Of course, they've got a Coro there, so you're looking at a little bit more lineup flexibility here at this point. Maybe go with Darius Garland playing that true point guard position, kind of what he did at Vanderbilt a few years back. And you see Scotty Barnes kind of take on that Draymond Green role over there in Cleveland. They're going to really focus on the defensive side of the floor. Okoro and Scotty Barnes are going to be getting stops for years for this Cleveland Cavaliers team, and I think that this is a positive move for that franchise.
I think that would be a really, really interesting situation to have take place because it's very possible that Sexton does get moved in the offseason, so that would really make that a valuable selection. At number 6, we have the Golden State Warriors, who obviously now own the pick from the Minnesota Timberwolves based off of where they fit at number 6. So this is interesting. Golden State had a pretty okay year, a lot of ups and downs, but they will be getting Klay Thompson back. They'll have Andrew Wiggins next year, Steph Curry. There's going to be a little bit of a shakeup in the roster. Kelly Oubre will likely not be back. So what is the move for the Warriors?
Right, before I jump into that actual pick, I do want to talk about this pick just in general a little bit. I think this is the pick to watch on lottery night because there's so many different things that could happen here. This pick could move up to pick 5 or even 4, or actually it can't move up to 5, sorry, it can move up to pick 4, which has real complications for the Golden State Warriors here because it is top 3 protected. So you could look at maybe the Warriors adding in a talent like Jalen Green, possibly Jalen Suggs. Crazy if Evan Mobley fell to 4. There's a lot of different outcomes here where the Warriors could be getting a very, very fantastic player, or that pick could move up into the top 3. Goes back to the Wolves, who finished the year really strong with Chris Finch as their head coach. And you're looking at them maybe adding in another build-around type player. Very interesting dynamic here. But at pick 6 for the Golden State Warriors, it has to be Jonathan Kuminga. I think Kelly Oubre's played his last game as a Golden State Warrior. Doesn't sound like he wants to come back off the bench. Andrew Wiggins played very well, even received some all-defense votes, which is kind of ironic because of some of the critiques against him earlier on in his career in Minnesota. I think he has to be a member of the starting lineup. James Wiseman for sure going to be a starter. Draymond, Klay, Curry, we know what they are as well. So Kelly Oubre is not going to want to take a reduced role. The Warriors are going to look for someone to replace him coming off that bench at the start of their career, and Jonathan Kuminga is a perfect fit. I think he's also got some shot-creating potential, which they badly need there. They need other guys to put the ball in the hole and also become multi-positional defenders, and Jonathan Kuminga does all of that and more at the NBA level.
It'd be really nice to have a shot-creating wing. Obviously, it's going to take some time for Kuminga to develop at the next level, but it's no rush for the Golden State Warriors. They have enough talent there currently where he can just kind of suit in as a role player and eventually figure it out and expand his game further and further as his career progresses. So I think that's an A+ fit for Jonathan Kuminga. At number 7, we have the Toronto Raptors, and there was Obviously, a lot of things that did not go right for the Raptors this season. They were thought to be a for sure top 4 seed, top 5 seed in the East. That did not play out that way. So what were some of the issues with this team, and how can they fix that with this pick?
Part of the issue is they didn't really have consistent rim protection throughout the year. The center play was lacking, and you're also looking at a team that just really never got into a rhythm. That's a big part when you're going through an NBA schedule is, getting a few wins in a row kind of really does motivate a team and get you on the right track. They started out cold, couldn't really piece together a few wins back to back, never got that momentum throughout the year. I think that they're a team that's probably going to be back in the playoffs next year. I'd be surprised if they're not. Of course, Kyle Lowry is a free agent this offseason, but they're going to be focusing on building in a different direction here. And a player that I absolutely love for them that I think is basically a guarantee if he's on the board at 7 is Josh Giddey here from the NBL. He played for the Adelaide 36ers, and he was a triple-double machine. And a key thing with why I think this pick is a lock. The Toronto Raptors did send 2 amateur scouts to Australia to watch Josh Giddey during a 3-game stretch where he posted 3 straight triple-doubles. He played his best basketball with the Toronto Raptors scouting department watching, and I would be surprised if he's not a Toronto Raptor at the end of the day.
I think that's an awesome fit for him and the Raptors. We move into number 8. Once again, we have the Orlando Magic, who are really going to capitalize off of this Vucevic trade. There are some really interesting names potentially out there for them. Obviously, Davion Mitchell's a big name to watch. Do you think they'll still consider him despite, kind of the crowded point guard room?
I think they should definitely consider him, and I do think that they will look at him a little bit. I would love his fit here on a defensive standpoint where you have Mo Bamba, Wendell Carter as rim protectors, add a little bit more perimeter defense. You also have Jonathan Isaac there, but that's actually not the direction I'm going to have them go. I think that they need a little bit more size and consistent half-court scoring, especially from a slashing standpoint, someone who can get to the rim and finish, take guys off the bounce and finish through contact, and that's Jalen Johnson here out of Duke. He was playing very, very well before opting out midway through the season. He was one of the sole bright spots for that Duke team this past year, and I think that he's going to be a phenomenal NBA player. Magic already having grabbed Jalen Green earlier makes it a little tougher to grab a guard at pick 8, but Jalen Johnson, a wonderful fit there in Orlando.
At number 9, we have the Sacramento Kings, and Sacramento's kind of at a pivot point in their franchise. Are they going to kind of tear it down, or are they going to try to patch it together and try to shoot for the playoffs that way? Obviously, they have a long way to go in their roster reconstruction. Buddy Hield very well could be traded. There's a lot of things going on with the Sacramento team. What pick makes the most sense at 9?
Yeah, the Kings here definitely need to be looking into the front court, but I just think it's maybe a little bit early at pick 9. I think they are a team to watch for a trade down scenario, just because I think at 9 it's a little bit of a reach on some of the bigs in this year's class. They're going to just go best player available here. That's Davion Mitchell. He was the engine behind that Baylor Bears championship run. He's a phenomenal defender. I know that they've already got 2 really solid players in that backcourt in Tyrese Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox. But I'm looking at this team as someone who needs to add a third guard into the rotation. I think that this could be a dangerous lineup to run as well. You can even put Mitchell into a lineup with Fox and Halliburton occasionally to match other small ball teams. I think Mitchell gives you a lot of versatility. He can guard multiple positions despite his size. And that's really the only knock on him is his size. If he was 6'5", he would be a top 5 pick in this year's class. There's no question about that. Of course, he's 6'2", does limit him a little bit, but from a talent standpoint and the work ethic he brings to the gym, Davion Mitchell is going to be a home run pick here for the Sacramento Kings.
Really like that best pick or best player available. That's obviously what they did last year, and that really worked out with Tyrese Halliburton. At number 10, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. They are kind of going through a transition as well. Stan Van Gundy is no longer their head coach. We've heard a lot of Zion rumors about his family not wanting him to play there. So this is a little bit of noise in New Orleans. How can they kind of quiet that down and build a playoff contender?
It's all about finding some floor spacing and some guys who are going to fit not only around Zion Williamson, but Brandon Ingram. I thought that he was in a position where he could maybe take another step forward. They opted to go with Stan Van Gundy. I think he limited that team quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see who they bring in as a new head coach. I hope they run their offense through Brandon Ingram because of his ability to create for himself and also others and the attention he draws. So I think a guy that could complement that well is Moses Moody here out of Arkansas. He can shoot the ball very, very well. Needs to develop a little bit when it comes to going at the rim, also finishing through contact. But I think that's something, if you're New Orleans with your current roster construction, you're not as worried about his weaknesses as you are concerned with his strengths, and his strengths fit perfectly into your needs.
Absolutely. At number 11, we have the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets played really, really well this year by their standards, but they have to take that next step. And I think a lot of that stems on the play of their big men, right? Obviously, they have some interesting fours, but they still need a five, a true center.
Yeah, they definitely do need to. And I'm actually going to be a little bit more cautious here with the Charlotte Hornets. I'm not going to go with a center here at this point because I think that they believe in Vernon Carey and Nick Richards to be quality rotational bigs, at least for one season. See what you have there. They spent 2 second-round picks last season. I don't think they want to see those go to waste. Both of them played fairly well in the G League this past season. So I think they're confident with their big men for 1 year. They're going to go best player available here, Keon Johnson, University of Tennessee. He's a combo guard, can handle the rock, and does everything that LaMelo Ball doesn't do great. Keon Johnson does it phenomenally, getting to the rim, finishing through contact a little bit more efficiently than LaMelo Ball does. And I think Keon Johnson is going to be a perfect complement to LaMelo. Devontae Graham is a free agent this offseason, and you're looking at a team that badly needs a little bit more wing scoring. Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, both 2 really good players there, but Keon Johnson gives you a little bit of a different dynamic as someone who can create for himself, also for others, and do it off dribble drive penetration.
Something else about Keon Johnson, he is one of the highest ceilings in terms of athleticism profile, just extremely bouncy, really quick twitch athlete. I think this guy has a lot of room to grow. Hopefully he can develop that shot a little further. That is where he definitely struggles. At number 12, we have the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are, once again, they have to kind of figure out who they are. Are they going to push their chips in, or are they going to kind of go into the rebuild mode? It all depends on what happens with DeMar DeRozan, but I think the ship has sailed for them, and DeMar will not be back. So what is the next move for the San Antonio Spurs?
Right, the Spurs here are in an interesting situation because there's a different ways I think that they could look. They badly need some help in the front court behind Jakob Poeltl. So the centers here, there's a few times where I've passed on them, and I think I'm going to pass on them one more time for a guy who I think really fits the Spurs culture and gives them a little bit of a different dynamic from what they already have at this point. And that is going to be forward Zaire Williams out of Stanford. He's a very, very unique player. I think he's going to be a great glue guy in the NBA for a very long time. He's got all-around skills. He can put up triple doubles. He's someone who can pass the ball as a 4-man. Probably can play a little bit of the 3 as well. Last year, I know they went with Devin Vassell. I really love what he brings as a scorer. So I think here it's about trying to bring in a little bit more athleticism, some more length, and someone who can give you a little bit of versatility on how you run your offense. Because I don't think DeJounte Murray is necessarily the guy you want to run your offense through 100% of the time. Lonnie Walker, I've got some question marks about that. Zaire Williams gives them a little bit more in transition. I think that's the key thing for the Spurs team. Get some stops, get outrun, get easy buckets. That's kind of the strength of this team. Zaire Williams helps them do that a little bit more.
I really like the pairing with Williams and Vassell. That's going to be a dangerous wing tandem for quite a few years. At number 13, we have the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, Indiana is just, they're close, but they just need a little bit more to really push them into the postseason. What player makes the biggest impact for them?
Yeah, at this point, I think they're a little disappointed because I think they will be looking for a backcourt player more than likely on draft night. Maybe they're a team to watch to move up, try and target someone like Keon Johnson or maybe Josh Giddey. But at this point, they're going to go with Corey Kispert. He's fallen just a little bit. He's a phenomenal shooter, someone who's going to space the floor, and he's a very safe pick at this point. He comes in, I think he's a very underrated athlete as well. Someone who's going to space the floor off Domantas Sabonis. I think they just need a little bit more shooting there. And I think they need a little bit more creation off the wing as well. Kispert doesn't necessarily bring you that, but maybe the Pacers will look in the trade market for ways to move around from Malcolm Brogdon, possibly Miles Turner this offseason. It's going to be maybe a little bit of a facelift for Indiana. I think Corey Kispert would be a nice building block for them moving forward, though.
That pick also could be a trade chip as well, so let's not completely rule that out. At number 14, we have the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they took Jonathan Kuminga with the 6th overall pick. Now they're sitting here at 14, and this is kind of interesting. A team that's already, very, very well could have made the playoffs had they had Klay Thompson. Very likely they would have, but they're adding the 6th pick and the 14th pick in this draft. Who's going to be number 14?
Yeah, 14 here, a very important pick as well for this franchise. I think that they're going to go with a very well-rounded player in James Bouknight, someone who is all about winning, really carried that UConn team, and I think he's someone who's a nice addition into this roster. Jordan Poole really took a big step forward this year as a creator. I see him playing kind of that Jordan Clarkson role. So it's about finding someone who can fit in the backcourt next to him. Again, you're drafting for a role player at this point. not someone who's necessarily going to be a star. I think Kuminga has star potential. Wiseman, who they took last year, has star potential. Those are the two building blocks for the future, but they're in a rare situation where they also have a great team right now. They went 39-33 this past year. If they were out east, I believe they would have been about the 6 or 5 seed, arguably, based on their record. So this is a very good team. They add 2 lottery picks here. Bouknight, a nice compliment piece already to Kuminga, and also what they have on that roster.
Absolutely. I think they're really rounding out that roster nicely, and they're getting healthy. At number 15, we have the Washington Wizards. Scott Brooks is out. This is once again where the Wizards have to decide if they're going to kind of tear this down or they're going to try to build around Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. I think they definitely have a pathway of becoming a pretty nice team in that Eastern Conference, but this team has a little ways to go in terms of, what's in the front court. Or do you think that they'll kind of address the backup guards?
I think that they're going to look into the front court. I think Ish Smith has found a little bit of staying power there in Washington. It'll be interesting, though, with Scott Brooks out. It's hard to kind of project what this roster is going to look like. Who knows? Russell Westbrook maybe doesn't want to be in Washington anymore. Scott Brooks was the key reason for bringing Russell Westbrook in. Of course, he's no longer with the franchise. But at this point, I'm going to opt for Franz Wagner here at pick 15. I think this is solid value for him. I'm not as high on Wagner as other people are, but he's someone who can be a multi-position defender possibly in the NBA, brings underrated athleticism and also toughness into a team that badly needs it. Robin Lopez is a free agent this offseason. He's a tough guy for them. And you're looking at a front court that's just a little bit in question marks for me at this point. Thomas Bryant and Daniel Gafford, 2 young guys I like, but I don't necessarily know if they're built around pieces either. Franz Wagner comes in, gives you a little bit more of a steady piece.
At number 16, we have the Boston Celtics, and Boston, obviously, they're looking for their next head coach, but this is going to be kind of Brad Stevens' first time, Manning being the guy to make this decision with the pick. Who do you think he's going to select to really kind of build this team around?
Right. It's going to be interesting. We don't have a draft history on Brad Stevens, where he's going to look, but he knows this team's strengths and weaknesses better than anyone, and he knows that this team badly needs front court help. Ever since Al Horford's left, they've just been lackluster in that area. He's going to go with Isaiah Jackson here, arguably the best shot blocker in this year's class, and that's saying something with Evan Mobley also in this class. He can protect the rim. He's going to be a great rim runner, and it's going to be interesting to see who he brings in as the head coach there in Boston. I think Rick Carlisle is a real possibility, and someone like Isaiah Jackson, who's going to be super good in the pick and roll, would be a perfect complement to a possible heavy pick and roll offense with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown really running the show.
At number 17, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies obviously had a first-round matchup with the Utah Jazz. Had some struggles, obviously, once Donovan Mitchell came back in Game 2, and then beyond that, a lot of issues with the Jazz. They had their hands full. Is there a player here that they can really help as a key role player for them?
Yeah, there's a few different directions Memphis could go. I would really love for them to take a front court player yet at this point, and even though they have a lot of talent there, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., Jonas Valanciunas, but those guys tend to get in a lot of foul trouble. I would love for them to look that direction, but in this mock draft, I don't see them going in that direction, and rather I have them taking Ayo Dosunmu out of Illinois. I think he's a very nice piece, someone who I think would fit really well into this roster. And talking about foul trouble, Dylan Brooks fouled out of more games than any guard in the NBA this year. They still do need a little bit more backup help in the guard position. He's someone who can play the 1 or 2, gives them some flexibility, especially with Kyle Anderson's questionable future, for his future with the Memphis Grizzlies. I think Dosunmu comes in, fills that role well, and would be someone to build around off the bench for the Grizzlies.
Now we have the Oklahoma City Thunder picking at 18. They took Jalen Suggs at pick number 4. Now, this team has a lot of picks. It's very possible that they package some and move this pick up. They have a lot of flexibility with the number of draft picks that they have in this draft in particular. What player do you like for them?
I love this fit here. It's Alperen Şengün out of Turkey. After already grabbing Jalen Suggs, they find another player who can really help them score in the half court. He's got the best footwork in this class as a big man. He's someone who's going to be able to come in, score out of the post on day one. I think he needs to put on a little bit of weight to deal with other bigs on the defensive end of the floor, but it obviously is not something that scared them away in the past. They took Pokusevski last year, and I think Şengün, someone who's even better than Pokusevski was, and is going to be a very, very good NBA player very quickly on in his career. I really like what he brings, and I think that for Oklahoma City, you have to find people who can help them score the basketball. Şengün does that very well.
At pick number 19, we have the New York Knicks. They have pick number 19. They also have pick 21. from Dallas, and 32, another team that has some flexibility if they want to move up or down. It really depends, but they were a surprise playoff team this year. They did very, very well. But there's a lot of question marks with this roster, guys coming back or not. Do you think a lot of those guys are retained this offseason, or do you think it's going to be kind of a makeover once again?
Yeah, I think the backcourt position is going to probably be a little bit more of an open revolving door here. I think guys like Elfrid Payton probably will be out. I would be surprised if Frank Ntilikina plays another game with the New York Knicks. So that's a big question mark for me, but I do think Nerlens Noel will probably end up staying put. It kind of depends on how much of a market he has. I could see him getting paid $8 to $10 million. And if the Knicks are sitting there waiting for a star like Kawhi Leonard, maybe a guy like DeMar DeRozan, they might be waiting and lose out on some of their key players that really helped propel them this year. But at this point, I'm going to have them go with guard Tre Mann. I think he's a phenomenal fit into this Knicks team. It was clear in the playoffs. They needed someone else who could take some pressure off Julius Randle. I think they need an influx of playmakers and shot creators. Tre Mann does a little bit of both very well. Tre Mann, a very good shot creator. Also, I believe an underrated playmaker in this year's draft. Coming out of Florida, he was their key guy, and I think he really helps Julius Randle in the half court moving forward.
And now this is where it gets really interesting. At pick number 20, we have the Atlanta Hawks, who very well could beat the 76ers in this series. That is not concluded yet at the time of this video. So at 20, the Hawks have been one of those surprise teams this year. People did not expect them to get as far as they did. The East has been kind of wide open. So who do you think will be the selection for the Hawks?
Yeah, this is a little bit of the rich get richer scenario here because the Hawks don't really have that many needs. They've addressed a lot of those needs in free agency with Bogdan Bogdanovic, Danilo Gallinari. They also have Chris Dunn, who's expiring, but I very well could see him come back. He hasn't really played that much for the Hawks this year because of injury. They've got a lot of different players that are really key pieces on that team, but I think Usman Garuba here, they go for potential, someone who I think could be an absolute Swiss Army knife on the defensive end of the floor in the NBA. He's only 6'8", probably going to play that small ball five, maybe a little bit of the four-man position, but he can space out to the corner on offense, and he's got real makeup speed. He's got real makeup athleticism from a verticality standpoint. He's going to be a shot blocker on the next level, and I think he would be a great weapon off the bench. You put him next to Onyeka Okongwu, and it's going to be hard to score on the Hawks' second unit.
That Hawks team is looking deeper and deeper all the time, so really like that for them. At 21, we have the New York Knicks. They obviously took Tre Mann at number 19, a guy that can be a shot creator, a little bit of a playmaker. So where do they go with the next pick? Do you see them going possibly back up in the front court?
You had mentioned someone there, or you had mentioned them losing some players that really helped this team click this past year, and I think Reggie Bullock is another example of that. Someone who can really space the floor, also really proved to be a little bit more of a three-level scorer than maybe some other people had expected from him. Certain scenarios, he really stepped up big for that Knicks team. So I think it's going to be looking for someone who can maybe replace him in the draft so they don't have to spend their money on him. And we're going to go down and find Johnny Juzang here out of UCLA. He carried the UCLA Bruins during March Madness. I think that he's a very underrated player throughout this process. He's a true three-level scorer. You're looking at this team adding not only one, but two scorers for the half court. It was clear and obvious how much they needed more scoring on this team during the playoffs. That's why the Hawks upset them, beat them so handedly. Adding Johnny Juzang and Tre Mann will greatly help this roster.
That's a nice fit for Johnny Juzang. At 22, we have the LA Lakers. Now, with the Lakers, obviously they struggle with injuries all year long, but there were some more mechanical issues with this roster. Where do you think a quick fix could be?
Yeah, a quick fix is going to be someone in the backcourt. I think Dennis Schroeder probably has played his last game as a Los Angeles Laker. Magic Johnson, of course, did not give him his stamp of approval either. So I think the Lakers are probably going to be looking in other directions, and they're going to go with the winner, Jared Butler here, the junior out of Baylor. He was the key running mate next to Davion Mitchell. Those two guys fueled the Baylor Bears, and I think Jared Butler going 23rd overall not only fits what Los Angeles is trying to do, which is win a championship, but also really fills in some of those key needs, such as some toughness, defensive versatility. I think Jared Butler does a lot there for Los Angeles.
I think that's very much a Frank Vogel-like player, obviously with his defensive ability. At 23, we have the Houston Rockets. They selected Cade number 1. Now here at 23, who do you think is the best fit?
Yeah, if you're Rafael Stone here, the GM for the Houston Rockets, you have a big grin on your face because someone who could easily be a lottery pick is still on the board here. That's Kai Jones, the sophomore out of the University of Texas. This guy is going to be a perfect fit next to Cade Cunningham, Kevin Porter Jr., He can function early on as the backup big behind Christian Wood. I could also see him coexisting a little bit with Christian Wood. Brings you some real rim protection. He's going to be a rim runner, brings really good athleticism at that 5-man position. The Rockets here with back-to-back picks, Kai Jones being the first one, a very good grab.
So at 24, where do you see them going right after?
Yeah, they're going to look for another scorer. They're really trying to improve this team on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Kai Jones really does help a lot on the defensive side. So now they come back, try and find someone to fill in that bench, give them someone who's going to score early on, and that's Cam Thomas. He did that all year for the LSU Tigers, and he's going to be doing it next year for the Houston Rockets, coming off the bench behind Kevin Porter Jr. and Cade Cunningham. I love his fit here. I think that he's a very underrated player, and grabbing him at 24 is maximizing value.
It's really nice for the Houston Rockets. They are getting the score off the bench. They need somebody to lead that second unit. There's not a lot of places where Cam Thomas is going to be able to step in and be handed the keys to a second unit. Obviously, they do not have a ton of depth there in Houston as they are going through this rebuild. I think that's the perfect landing spot for him and where he will get the most volume. At 25, we have the LA Clippers, and the Clippers, once again, they are very, very close to potentially going to the Western Conference Finals. But this team definitely needs to look at that point guard spot potentially. But how does it play out now that Reggie Jackson's contract will be over after this year? And what if they are not able to retain him?
Yeah, for the Los Angeles Clippers, it's going to be all about the backcourt throughout this entire process. Just looking at how Ty Lue's managing these rotations, a lot of small ball 5, and they need a little bit more creation help. And they're going to go with Sharif Cooper here. Not necessarily the best self-creator, but he can create for others. He's a phenomenal passer. That's really where his greatness and strengths lie, is with him passing the basketball. They brought in Rajon Rondo, but he's only got 1 year left on his deal. I think he could be an excellent mentor to Sharif Cooper early on. And then in this situation, Sharif Cooper is not rushed to play right away. He can kind of work on some development. We could see him play with the Agua Caliente Clippers in the G League a little bit. There's a lot of versatility here for the Clippers. Sharif Cooper, I think, has very good upside, though, in fitting with their stars.
Absolutely. At 26, we have the Denver Nuggets, and Denver, they had a tough break in the playoffs, obviously had their hands full with the Phoenix Suns this year, and also they just did not have Jamal Murray. So at 26, what do you think the best course of action will be for them, considering a guy like Will Barton and Paul Millsap, they will be on their way out likely?
Right. It's going to be about finding some depth. I think Jaden Springer is the best option here. I think he's still got pretty good upside, but he's someone who can at least come in, function as a scorer off the bench. I think he'd be a great secondary piece next to Facu Campazzo and also Monte Morris as someone who can really score the ball with that second unit. Monte Morris, of course, really good at handling the pick and roll. Facu Campazzo, probably one of the best passers off the bench in the NBA. They need a little bit more scoring input off the bench. Of course, they didn't get to where they wanted to go this year. Injuries kind of derailed them, but Springer coming in next year would help fill in that backcourt a little bit.
At pick 27, we have the Brooklyn Nets, and they're doing a nice job in the playoffs, and obviously they are trying to fight some injuries. How can they increase their overall depth in this draft?
Right. I think for the Brooklyn Nets here, with some of the question marks about their future, their stars aren't under contract that long. James Harden could be out within 2 seasons. Kevin Durant, the same is true for him. Kyrie Irving could be out at any point 2 years from now. So it's about finding someone who maybe could develop into a real scoring option for them down the road in case worst case scenario does happen. And that'll be Josh Christopher here out of Arizona State. He really struggled from 3, shot only 29% for the Sun Devils, but he is someone who I really, really like as a half-court creator. I think he's going to be the Kevin Porter Jr. from this class. Very, very dynamic with the ball in his hands, can get north-south very easily, and he's got real creation potential. It just is a matter of if he's going to start hitting those shots or not. Give him a little bit of time in the G League, and I think he does develop into a very nice player.
At pick 28, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, and obviously they have definitely had their hands full with the Hawks. That is not something we were expecting. We thought the 76ers would likely win that series pretty handedly, but that has not been the case. What are some of the issues with this team right now?
Yeah, it's obvious infrastructure issues with how this roster was built by Elton Brand. They don't have enough shooting off the bench. They don't have enough shot creation off the bench. They tried it with Tyrese Maxey. He's been a nice piece for them, but I think that they need to honestly find a way to move on from Ben Simmons, even though I believe he's a great player. And Austin, this is probably the first time you're hearing me say that because you know how much I like Ben Simmons. He just hurts them. I saw a statistic today. He's missed 46 free throws this playoffs already. That just it's really hard for a team to win games when one of your 2-star players is not making free throws very consistently. We saw how Luka Doncic missing free throws against the Clippers hurt them in that series. And now Ben Simmons missing free throws has really hurt them against the Atlanta Hawks. So at this point, they have to be looking into the backcourt. And this is a player I really like, Nashawn Bones-Highland out of VCU. Sophomore guard. He can really space the floor. And I think he's someone who gives them a little bit shot creation potential, especially from deep. He does it in a different way than Tyrese Maxey, who's more of a mid-range, get to the rim type of shot creator. Nashawn Highland is comfortable shooting it from deep. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Emmanuel Quickly, as someone who can really space the floor with the ball in his hand still. I think he's a phenomenal fit here into Philly, assuming they do have this pick.
At 29, we have the Phoenix Suns, and Phoenix has really kind of put things all together here. But I definitely think there are some depth pieces that they could use. Do you think it's possible that they'll replace Cameron Payne with whatever pick this is?
Yeah, that's the one thought I really had when I was putting together this mock. But I feel like Cameron Payne, they might try and use some of those early bird rights to retain him. That'll be the real storyline to watch for Phoenix this offseason. They played such good basketball that really the only question mark for them for the future is, of course, Chris Paul, assuming they keep him, which that's my guess at this point. I'm guessing he'll stay in Phoenix. But then looking at Cameron Payne, but at this point, I think he's going to be around, so I think they're going to go with an upside guy, Greg Brown, someone who brings real athleticism, guy can jump out of the gym, could be a two-way weapon for them down the road. With how good they are currently composed, I think it's going to be about trying to find guys who could help them pass the duration of some of those contracts. Jay Crowder's a guy who's going to be expiring 2 years from now. I think Greg Brown could slot into his starting spot in the future.
And now finally at pick 30, we have the Utah Jazz, and Utah has had some struggles in this series. They thought they were definitely going to win Game 5. That did not happen against the Clippers. Where do you think in terms of depth that they need to improve?
I think that they have to look for a backup big man. Derek Favors just been horrendous, to be completely honest, during this playoff run, especially against the Los Angeles Clippers. He's been getting exposed extremely consistently. I think they have to find a little bit more athleticism, someone who's going to fit a little bit better around their star player Donovan Mitchell, and that's Neemias Queta out of Utah State. He's a little bit older of a player, but he's got real athleticism, real shot blocking potential, and I think he's someone who could step in when Rudy Gobert comes out and fill in their needs very, very well. He's a phenomenal player for this team, and looking down here, here's the overall thing. I think Queta is a great fit into the Utah Jazz. This is his first time going in the first round on one of our mocks, but I think he's a great player.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Please subscribe if you are new. Also, leave a like if you did enjoy the content of this video. Sheldon works very hard at studying all these prospects holistically. It's a lot of work to put these together, but we do it all for our subscribers. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys in the next video.